Suffering is awakening, that trauma is awakening, that cruel shocks are somehow connected to the healing process. And that's a big point to ponder, something to mull over, because we struggle so much with suffering and we so much try to avoid it, and it can seem so counterintuitive, paradoxical to say actually the suffering's good for you. It sounds almost sadistic. Mm-hmm. Suffer, great. It's like when people are suffering and Bart says, good! It's like...
Bart says, you do it too.
I'm just copying him. So, suffering, the nature of suffering. It's also, yesterday was Easter Sunday, and we don't have to believe in anything, but nevertheless, it's in the air, it's in the energy, it's globally. This human, meaning all of us, part of this human was going through a very strong ritual through the Easter weekend. And that ritual is very much connected with this, with the nature of suffering, the story of the crucifixion and the Via Dolorosa, the humiliation, the rejection, the shame, the betrayal, the betrayal even of the disciples, of the teaching in a way, the physical torture, all the way to the point of being forsaken by God. Like, he's hanging there on the cross. That was Good Friday. Yeah. And then there is this kind of descent into absolute and total absence. Really into the dark night. There is no God. After all of this miracles and inspiration and teaching, I'm not talking now as trying to get you a Christian message, but it's a metaphor.
Yeah, you can.
It's a story of all of us. And he was a good Jew. So in that descent into this place of complete and total absence and formless suffering which no longer has a form. So as long as he was being whipped and tortured and rejected and cursed, it still had a form. But to a certain stage, when you meditate and you come deeper into true nature, you lose form. You move into the formless stillness, the formless silence, the great infinite space. But also then suffering loses its form. And so what you've got is this formless, infinite forsakenness. Forsaken is like, you know what forsaken is? And he says, my Lord, why have you forsaken me? Mm. It's like into the core. This is the alchemy of healing. Because when somebody, even one person, any one of us, is able to go into the core and awaken there, something happens. Something happens in that moment where you say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where there is this opening out, where are you? Mm. It's like in that moment, in that cry, why have you forsaken me? There is a calling to the whole universe beyond even the formless. And if we look at the metaphor, the story of what happens then, with that ultimate surrender to formless, horror of whatever its variety. Because it's not just forsaken is pretty much it, but it can be with betrayal, with abandonment, with whatever. There is this movement in which something begins to rise up. Something is pulled home in a way. And that would be what we would call the resurrection. Or it's a kind of evolution. And it's in little ways this happens with all of us, every day. And sometimes in I Exist it's more clearly happening. So the very word suffering is the same as passion. So we say the passion of Christ. And when we say the passion of Christ, we mean the suffering of Christ. But passion is where that suffering turns the corner and in service of the whole. This is now tough love. This is, all the time he was doing miracles with the love from here. But in that moment, this is where the real miracle begins to happen, because it becomes the rage of love. The purely unconditional love. It's the kind of love that can kill if that's what's needed for the whole. This is truly unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't about fucking around. It's about a love which will allow all the other emotions to be free. So today, what we are working with as in our awakening as true nature, what we're beginning to open up is this quality of passion, which is so close to the healing power of suffering. So, if we bring it a little bit to the ground and look a little bit inside of what we've been individually going through in these days, with that felt sense, with the feeling connection, it can be possible maybe to sense into something of this energy of karma, of where the unconditional passion, the love of the universe, really hurts us. It pushes us out of the boat. It makes us a perpetrator. It hurts the body and makes us helpless. Where it's kind of, in a way, almost punishing us for out of love, in a way. To get something free, to reach a place which otherwise we couldn't touch, because we wouldn't go there. We're not going to hurt ourselves. And we shouldn't hurt ourselves. But when I capsized from the boat, and I don't want to be kind of like megalomaniac about this story, but in that moment, my brother drowned 3, 4, 5 years ago, in his clothes, with all his clothes on. In that 1 second of being under the water, and I came up and I was under the boat, and I realized I had clothes on, I was one with my brother.
Yeah.
It was like a reunion, in a way. Like something in the shock of losing him, where I couldn't reach him. For all the will in the world, I couldn't go there with him. I could go there afterwards. I could feel him dissolving. In fact, before he died, I could feel him dissolving in the love of the water. I experienced myself as water, and the water was love, and after that I'd heard that he had died. All of that was there. But this moment of pure survival horror, where he was alone, fully clothed in the water, and going down, I couldn't reach that. And in that moment it was like touched. Something was set free. And then my brother's back again. And in that moment it's so unconditional, this passion. I could have been carried down the river and I was quite happy for that. I could have joined him. Yeah. That last resistance, he dies, not me. This selfish thought, it was like gone. And I don't mean a mental permission to drown in that moment, but it just happened. We can't control this. We can't make this happen. It's that kind of healing power that isn't coming from the mind, but it's coming from living, from embodiment. So, yesterday we moved with bliss, moving more into the body. And that's quite a doorway to the passion, because the passion is connected with the physical aspect. And it can be enough just to touch something essential, just to touch it, to set up, and you touch it in the right place, or if you find yourself touched in that timeless moment in the right place, to set off a whole process of healing. That's how it works, this alchemy, this awakening of forgotten parts of ourselves. And of course, when I say touch, there is degrees of touch. There is to touch with consciousness, which is what we've been doing along the way, the touch of consciousness. Also for each other, when we share and we tell each other stuff, all the consciousness touches something which is vulnerable, and it's painful, but it's such a healing effect. But there's also the physical touch. And that's perhaps why these active retreats are so powerful, because we're moving the physical body. And so much is stored in terms of the subconscious themes of our own healing journey inside the body. Meaning, when there is pain in the body of any kind of pain, aching feet, pins and needles, an ache, whatever kind of pain, it is also, at the same time as it is physical pain, it is emotional pain at the same time. This is partly that crucifixion movement. We in the New Age and in alternative medicine, we like, is it the mind, or is it the body, or is it the body, or is it the mind, and the whole somatic experiencing that it's only the body and not the mind, this whole, or not the psyche, all of this, like, is it this or is it this, in an experiential way, in I exist, it becomes clear that it's all one. Pain is pain. It's also this, also this, also this. It's just pain. And pain, if you fall over and bump your head, the pain you experience is immediately also emotional pain. It's experienced in a certain way. That particular flavour of victimhood, that particular flavour of not being wanted by the universe, whatever comes forward, even with a physical accident, is always also a psychological process with suffering. Both at the same time. It's not mind or body, it's one pain. Nondual pain. The brain actually processes it as one pain. This is scientific. The brain doesn't say this one is emotional and this one is physical. It doesn't separate. It just says agony, whether it's an emotional rejection or whether it's a physical suffering. It responds the same way. Bart talked on the earlier day about how everything goes through the body. And in that sense, it's even beyond that. It's like everything is the body, but we don't know, and everything is the physical, but we haven't got a clue what the physical miracle is. I mean, humanity doesn't yet really have a clue. The deeper they get into the nature of matter, the more confused they get. I mean, that's the state of art of our science. It's a process of realizing that we don't know shit. The more deeply we go into the atomic levels, into the quantum levels, we go jumping backwards and forwards in time. We're totally entangled across the universe, across space. There is no thing at the basic particle, it's just energy. We haven't psychologically caught up with that yet. We haven't been able to psychologically process this scientific fact that there is no thing at all of a body, that it's a reverberation. But if it's a reverberation, then the reverberation of pain is a reverberation of pain. Doesn't matter if it's because of this or because you cut your hand. It's a reverberation of pain. It's an experience of pain, and the experiential reverberation is primary then to healing. Doesn't matter what the cause is, whether it's physical or emotional. So when we move into the physical experience, it's the same with pleasure. It's the same with love. We can feel it in our fingers. We can feel peace in our fingers. And we can feel the movement of passion in our fingers, but very much with touch, because passion is to do with evolution, the cycle of creation and destruction. So with our minds, what we tend to do is make all kinds of divisions and hierarchies, and also we'll say this is physical and this is subtle and this is spiritual and this is human, and we kind of try and build pyramids of structures and try to get somewhere through it. But as they say in Zen with the chopping potatoes and chopping wood, it's just the simplicity of touch of touching a leaf is the whole story, potentially. It's the soul of the universe is touching and being touched in that moment. It's like a miracle in every breath, in every moment of experience. There's this alchemy, this resurrection, this miracle is happening. And what happens in all spiritual workshops, but especially I Exist, is that the rhythm of this reawakening, of this cycle, speeds up. And then it can seem like, oh God, everything's getting out of control, it's getting catastrophic, it's because there's such a quickening and the mind gets like, whoa, I can't keep a track of this, great. Because partly the mind trying to control things is what kept things kind of under the surface suffering, kept us out of touch with life, the life that we are. This is partly why when we talked about peace somewhere in the Wells Cathedral, it's so important, because in that moment of touch, you've got this basic primal thing, you've got the movement of consciousness, or the movement of the active principle, and you've got that which is touched. But this one's also alive. So we move with our awareness towards the wall of a castle. And does the castle feel that it is touched? In some way. Just when we see it, when our consciousness moves towards it, certainly when our finger moves towards it, the atoms inside the cement of the castle start to vibrate in an awakening to the touch of our finger. And this quickening of vibration is a healing movement. When we talk about the suffering of duality, what's happening more is like the kill or be killed movement. So it's not touch, it's like collision. It's like the accident. It's me or you. It's bam. And that's also a healing movement. Stress is also an evolutionary principle. If we can allow the stress to move through us, fear is also an awakening. It's an evolutionary principle. It awakens, We're walking down, having a nice time and I Exist, then something horrific happens, fear rises, and everybody's suddenly awake in a different dimension completely. And they work together immediately in collaboration, tick, 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 and everything's moving as one. This beautiful collaboration, that's a total awakening into true nature. Through catastrophe, through fear. So, the qualities of true nature, because we awaken as the qualities of true nature, in that collaborative way, in that togetherness, in that connectivity, in that peacefulness, in that care, but it's also there in the attitude of the one that touches. So when we touch something with care, or when we touch something with peace, with an attitude of peace in our consciousness, or with unconditional acceptance, that's unconditional release, like really giving it permission to be there. This is also having a healing effect. That's when we begin to work with the subtle healing agents in a way. And it's not voodoo, because all of psychology is based on this. All of religion is based on this. You go to the rabbi, he listens to you. Something is seen, it's received. Somebody heard you. It helps. You feel so much better. These days, conventionally, it's enough to go, sometimes for some people, to go to the doctor, tell him about your migraines. He gives you a prescription. You don't ever take it, but you feel better. Because of this healing effect of being seen, being affirmed, being recognized. The one other aspect, and then I let it be, about passion is that it's almost like it's love, but it's tough love. In a way, it's where the anger becomes the rage of love. It's where the love becomes empowered, So rather than the abuse of power, or wanting to possess, or grasp, or reverse, and all of this stuff, the love becomes not the love of power, but the power of love, as Jimi Hendrix said. All of that vitality in that base level of the physical, when it rises in passion, in this unconditional love, it creates a force of love, a force which is uncontainable for the individual separate self. You can only let it move through you. It's like this orgasm, but now we're talking of the soul, not just of the body.
It's a love which is so directed, so structured, and so precise, where normally love kind of is moving outwards. It's shared, it's unconditional in all directions, but when there is passion in love, it becomes like a sword, very precise, or a spear.
And it carries with it so many of the other qualities. So beauty is very much connected with passion. The appreciation and ability to perceive beauty, the ability to let beauty in, or to let beauty be. And clearly it's got a lot to do with the process of creativity. And we are all artists, we are all co-creators with the big creator. In fact, we are all the big creator, and little creators, both. Where we go to another league here with these energies is that there is, in Glastonbury, is that there is this recognition of the necessity of creation to dance with destruction. So throughout all of life is this cycle of creation and destruction. So right now we're in springtime, but in 6 months' time everything's going to be lying low, going deep down, going into its own nucleus, in a way, of the winter. And this is very much how we are built in cycles of form. So what we of course all want, especially the ones with alcoholic ancestors, is to stay in the creativity. We don't want the destruction, so we create a kind of overdraft of destruction. Because we want the creation is good, and springtime, and life, and all of this, but we don't want death. We don't want disease. We don't want the breakdown. We don't want to separate. We want to come together. We don't want the space between us that allowed us to come together in the first place. So any act of creation involves destruction, also to the micro level. You know, you've got a piece of wood, and you can see inside the wood the beautiful female form that you can bring out of it. But you have to destroy the wood to bring out the female form, to create the work of art. It's the part of the beautiful game of being alive, the play of being alive. So also inside our inner processes, sometimes it can feel like we are in that Via Dolorosa, or in that moment of being totally forsaken. And it's horrific, and we want to get out of there. We want to pull out of there as soon as possible. And yet in that burnout moment, in the process of creation and destruction, when you come to burnout, to the ground zero, it can be so worthwhile to make that. Jesus said, why have you forsaken me? But it can also be just let yourself softly fall deeper into the ground of your own ground zero, into the wasteland, into the apocalypse. Because then, by itself, there's a little time factor which we have no control over. It can be minutes, it can be hours, it can be
thousands of years.
The next day. By itself comes an energy starts to rise up again, a creative energy. And in a way, the more we surrender to the destructive side, the more the creative energy rises in a precision of what's needed all around. It's almost like deep inside the earth or the ground of our being is the exact formula. It's in the winter. It's under the ground. It's not in the head, a long way away from the head. So I hope it gives us a little bit of insight into what shit we're going through in these days, each in our own way, and why it's worthwhile, why it has that liberating, awakening effect later on. Why it makes us feel good, why in the end it somehow realigns us in a place which is rational well-being, logical, kind of that dumb donkey feeling like, why am I still doing this, this and this? It's like, I just need to do this. that area.